Grief is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new chapter. Welcome back to the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamone, and I'm the founder of the Empower Grief Journey coaching and podcast platform. Each episode brings real conversations with people from around the world who have navigated grief and discovered the strength to create new inspired beginnings. You'll discover how to walk from loss to empowerment through powerful storytelling that will guide you forward towards a future filled with courage and hope. Today, I have an amazing guest with us, you guys. You're going to love Jenny here in a minute. Jenny's a creative empowerment coach. She's also a musician, a composer, an educator, an author, and host of her own podcast, Your Creative Chord. She draws on more than 30 years of music education, performance, and composition. And her 39-year Buddhist practice, she helps people reconnect with their creative potential and express themselves with honesty and confidence. Through her books, courses, and coaching programs, she supports individuals in cultivating sustainable creative flow, strengthening self-compassion, and navigating burnout, grief, and major life transitions with clarity and resilience. And I'm going to tell you guys right up front before we even get into the podcast, I had a wonderful time meeting Jenny back in November. So it's been a little bit since she and I connected last, but you guys are in for an awesome podcast. So stay with us the whole time because Jenny's got a wealth of information about how to navigate the grief journey. And so, without further ado, Jenny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I want to take you everywhere. That was such an amazing introduction. And I enjoyed meeting you too. I feel like we have so much synergy in our experiences and in our outlooks on how we're traveling through the grief journey. So thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Hey, you're very welcome. Well, Jenny, as I usually have a lot of my guests do, tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your grief journey that you've been on.
Wow. Okay. Sure. Well, first of all, before I just segue into that, I just wanted to mention to your audience that I bought your book, and I've been
Oh,
reading the Empowered Grief Journey, and my mom is actually reading it right now, which is why her bookmark's in there. And I didn't know until I started reading your book that you have and you sent me this beautiful little lion with the book. I want everybody to see this is an amazing thing that you get when you buy his book. And I had no idea, and I didn't know what the lion symbolized for you, but you also sent me this lovely, I'm sorry, I know it looks like a plug for you, but I just love these, with the lion symbol. And you were just telling me that, well, it says on the bookmark actually that feeling is not weakness, it's courage. And I love because I've been listening to your podcast and how you talk about, being courageous is what it takes to go through grief. And all of your guests have obviously experienced that and are experiencing it. And then I don't know if you know this, and I'm going to share. I also find the lion symbolic of something very meaningful to me, and this is my postcard that a friend of mine gave me. But and on it says it is the heart that's important, and for me, if you don't mind, before I tell my story, back to your story, do you mind sharing with people? You just told me right before we get on here. What does the lion? Where did it come from? What's that symbolize for you?
I'll
Sorry, I
I'll
just
share that
flipped.
story quickly. No, that's fine. I actually have never talked about that on my podcast, believe it or not. So,
Okay,
um,
okay. I'm glad I
what I'll
asked.
share is my wife found a an Instagram store before Caden was born, and they did a lot of very colorful graphics with words built into them. And so they would have things like birds and lions and all sorts of other animals, but the words were meshed into the body of the animal. And so for some reason, the lion felt right for Caden. I don't know why, but it just felt right. And so my wife ordered three t-shirts with this lion's face, and it says "Courage in the Lion's Mane." Um, and so we got one for Caden too. So he has this little baby shirt. We still have it. But long story short, the Caden lion became a strength of courage and being able to navigate that grief journey in full heart of things. Because I think a lot of people. We think of courageous things all the time with movies and whatnot, like Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day with the big guns and the muscles and all that. But in the grief space, courage actually means something very different. And courage means that we allow ourselves to sit with our emotions, whatever we may be feeling that day. We allow ourselves to exist as we are, not what people want us to be. And we allow ourselves the ability to walk this journey exactly as we need to walk it without any kind of judgment, we should be doing X. We walk it as it is and we take things for what they are. And so the lion is a big symbolic gesture in my journey with Caden to say that this is your own unique journey and it's going to unfold as it should. It's never going to be anybody else's journey, but it'll be your own. And so, Jenny, I appreciate you asking me that because the lion for me represents our own individual courage within ourselves. And that can look so many different ways for all of us, which is what I think is so beautiful about that.
Thank you so much I'm so glad you're sharing that with your listeners because I didn't know that background of how it is so meaningful to you and your connection to your late son, Caden. And for me, the lion, it's very similar. You're equating the lion not only to courage to feel, but also, like you said, the courage is not just external, macho bravado or whatever, or, courageous external action. It's actually this inner transformation that you're willing to face courageously and change yourself and transform yourself. And that is exactly, I'm an SGI Buddhist, and the lion is very symbolic in SGI as the symbol of courage, the symbol of being courageous and perseverant, and to be able to persevere in doing your own inner transformation. And so that does require going for and the also this postcard I got from my friend who's also an SGI Buddhist. It says it is the heart that's important, because in Buddhism, that kind of transformation in your heart is the most powerful transformation you can do, which is very synergistic with what your experiences and with what you talk about on your podcast. And for me, it's the synergy there is that it represents the courage to face grief. And for me personally, and I'll tell my story now since you asked that question, that kind of segue into that. For me, I've been able to have the courage to externally navigate many different losses, which I'll explain. But for me, it's like you, it's a lifelong process. And I feel like the greater courage is not what I've had to already do externally, like when my brother was killed in an accident in 2004 before he was 29. I basically had to stand up and help a lot with getting the memorial service going. A lot of people in my family just weren't functional. It was a complete shock. And then my father passed away 2014 through a battle with cancer. I again was the functional one to rise up and help deal with all the memorial things, planning and coordinating with the different parties that are involved in putting that together. And so externally, for example, I've been able to function, period. I guess you should say it that way. But for me, the real transformation is having the courage to, like you said, sit with my feelings. And I've done that, but I still do that with each one of these people that I've lost. I've also lost 3 very close, lifelong friends. Excuse me, all of them basically unexpectedly. One of them was my dear friend Linda, who was like a surrogate mother to me. She went out to a different state for the holidays to visit her family, and 2 months later, she was dead. They diagnosed her with cancer while she was up there. I never saw her again. Another very close friend of mine, after I moved from Florida back to Kentucky, where I am now as a caregiver for my senior mom, one of my longtime friends, Tina, died suddenly of a heart attack before she was 50. And she's someone that I stayed in touch with by text, like almost every day. We'd encourage each other to have the spirit of the lion, to challenge our challenges. And Tina and I actually were Buddhist practitioners together, and we were in the same area in Florida, and we together helped other people put together and facilitate their memorials. We did like 8 different memorials of multiple people that we knew. And then when she passed away, I hauled it back down to Florida and did her memorial service. And then another very lifelong friend of mine just passed away in December last year. Sorry, 2024, not last year. And so through all of my experiences, most of them have been very suddenly, very unexpectedly, and I've had to just function to carry on. and those external tasks that need to be done. But I've also, because I am a creator and it's how I live my life, and especially now as a creative empowerment coach, I've learned to integrate how I've used my own creative process to navigate sitting with my feelings. So, in a nutshell, creativity and my spiritual practice have really been the anchors for myself to function well, to function compassionately for others in a crucial moment, but also when that crucial moment and all the dust settles, to then sit with my own feelings courageously and really navigate those in a way that creates value and literally changes my suffering into, something valuable, creativity, for example, songs, poetry, music. And I've used all of those things literally for every memorial that I just talked about. I've either shared my music or my songs or poetry or all the above for everyone's memorial. And many times over the years, when I've seen other people go through loss, I've gifted them little chapbooks of poetry about that experience, just to encourage them that they're not alone. That, like you say, we're going through all of this side by side. Everyone will experience it. So that's my experience in a nutshell.
So, Jenny, you said a couple things that stood in my mind as you were talking, and one of them was that you went through a lot of sudden losses in your life, and that can be very, very abrupt and very hard for many of us to deal with because our life trajectory is that life is constantly moving, and we get into routines in life. We get up and go to work, we do certain things throughout the day, we unwind at night a certain way, we go to bed a certain way. We're always in this pattern constant. And when sudden loss hits, it's like something very abruptly comes up and breaks that pattern. And a lot of times we find ourselves questioning our own identity at times. We question why we're doing this job that we don't like anymore. We go through a big, massive transformation, and it is very scary and whatnot. And I wanted to ask you about that. But you also brought up that sitting with feelings is something you give yourself space for, and how your creativity and your spiritual practice has helped you with that as well. I'd love for you to elaborate on those 2 points for everybody, because I think people experience that but don't really know how to allow themselves to feel it the way you're talking about.
Oh, I really appreciate you clarifying all of that. And I will say, just from personal experience, and like you said, everyone grieves so differently. And for me, like the disruption to your daily patterns, I just literally felt nothing. I just felt like there was like this constant void, all right. Do you mind if I share a poem that I literally expressed about that point
Hmm.
at this point? You don't mind? So this is a poem that I wrote about that, which really I think is anybody that's experiencing or has experienced loss might relate to this. It's called Empty, which is to me how I felt the grief experience when I was going through some of these, especially the sudden shock losses. Empty. It's empty, like opening the door, but no one is there. Awkward and odd, like waking up in an unfamiliar place, expecting the usual. Eerie, to see everyone I love so dearly in normal circumstances carrying on like they have holes in their hearts, hidden beneath the chatter. There is a loud elephant in every room, roaring your absence, the void. We are circus trainers, put upon to catch this wild animal of loss without nets or whips for protection. Feels like falling without a net, dropping from my fear of heights, blundering into the darkness alone, and yet we are together without you. It's empty, like the moment when the sun disappears and night begins, quiet and still. But the memories and emotion overwhelm with fullness. I speak to you within my heart as if our dialogue never stopped. I listen for your voice from within the rustle of leaves and rain. I hear nothing, but feel it all. It's empty. So to me, that's that experience of the disruption to our lives, and for me, the what I felt I just expressed it in words. I just sat down and wrote it out. This is how I feel, and it's so, because when you lose someone, everyone's there, but we're all functioning kind of in a daze for a while sometimes, especially when it first happens. So I hope that answers your question. Like, for me, how did it disrupt my life? First of all, I acknowledged this is how I feel. And being able to write that poetry, and I know it's a kind of a heavy poem for that purpose, but being able to write or journal or compose music or create art, that relieves pressure that we have inside, and it helps us kind of hear ourselves. And honestly, I mean, it took a while, as you know. Grief can be kind of cyclical, which to me is very much parallel to what I experience with as a creator, with the ebb and flow of the creative process. It's not always output. It's not always, hey, I'm creating something. There are moments, just like in grief, where you have to be gentle with yourself and accept that sometimes you just have to sit still. Sometimes you have to just let those feelings out on the page or just in your heart, and understand that that's a moment. That's the ebb of the ebb and flow. And there's a cycle, and you will be able to, continue with things. I think it's a matter of, for me anyway, just having self-compassion and acceptance of what's going on. I hope that answered your question about, being disrupting our lives. And then as far as using creativity, that's an example of from my own life of writing my feelings out like that. And then I've also written, if you don't mind, I'll share the second poem that I wrote, because it's also about, this second poem is specifically, well, they both are actually, poems that I wrote in response to my brother's death, who was 12 years younger than me. And I was very close to him. So if you don't mind, I'll read the second one, because I think it will summarize the next part of the answer to that question. Do you mind? I'm trying to do it quickly because I don't want to waste anyone's time.
No, you're
But
fine, Jenny. You're fine. Go
oh,
for
thank you.
it.
So this poem is called "To Remember You," and I just want to say before I read it, this is an example of how I went through my grieving process. In this case, specifically about the loss of my brother, but it can really relate to anyone, I think, and how my basic outlook, I guess, or perspective on my own grieving process is that it's lifelong, it's eternal, as is my bond with the people that are gone from this life. And so in that process, this poem for me summarizes how, when I've lost a loved one like my brother John, how the way that I connected with him while he was alive transcends time and space, and I still connect that way to him, now as he's in a different place, and how I can continue to tribute my life and the way that I do my life and having a purpose in my life. Some of that I attribute straight to him and his way of living. So that's a little background. So the poem is "To Remember You." If I had my own little space where I could sit and have some peace, I would take my sweet time and just breathe and breathe all the fresh air around me. And this would be my place of refuge, where no one could bother me. And I would use my memories with all their colors and volume and those moments of silence to remember you. If I had my own creative home where I could lie and dream my dreams, I would weave you golden stories and sing you melodies. All the music pulsing within my heart would bring you home inside of me, where no one could interfere, and I would use our time there with all its leisure and meaning and those rhythmic beats between us to remember you. If I had my own secret tree where I could climb high to see the view, I would look up at you and just send you love like a butterfly paints its pattern in the sky. And this would be my solace and comfort, where only you would see me, And I would use our spiritual thread to sew beautiful tapestries and wrap them tightly around me to remember you. I believe you are right beside me, in the air I breathe, in the sky so free, in the ocean that rolls around the earth, in the wings of every bird. I believe you were meant to be forever wrapped around my soul, a spring of love wherever I go to remember you. So to me, that's, my brother was a big nature lover, and we both, I'm a musician, he and I both loved banging on drums, so that rhythmic pulse between us, and how much he loved nature. And when we went to scatter his ashes in one of his favorite parks, um, his a bunch of blue butterflies just came out of their nest and flew all around everywhere. So it's just very symbolic of his love of nature, and he was also a poet, so we had a lot of synergy there. Um, so for me, I'm going back to your question, like, how does grief interrupt you? The first poem kind of, explained sometimes it's agony, and then how do I learn to transform the pain of grief into a sense of purpose or a sense of encouragement or a sense of tribute and honor? For me, that's through writing of poetry or creating music or whatever. And I do that as well with what I do as a creative empowerment coach. I help people. It's not just about losing loved ones to death. There's also losses of jobs, or in my case, I'm the sole caregiver in a family where we're estranged from very toxic behaviors. So we're experiencing the loss of a family that we thought would be, and still remains to be seen if it will be in the future. But when you're going through all of this, and which we all do, for me, creativity, journaling, using the creative process, whether that's art or music or journaling or taking photos, nature photos, or designing things, whatever way you want to explore creativity, for me, that has always been and is an incredible force for helping me create meaning, from the losses that I've experienced. A long-winded way of saying that, but I hope that circled back and answered your questions.
No, I really appreciate that because a lot of people I loved your first poem, I have to say. You gave a lot of information on my brain. You got my brain thinking.
Sorry.
Um, no, it's fine. When you describe grief as being a numb feeling, I loved your phrase in that poem, wild animal of loss. That could not describe grief in a more profound way, to be honest. Because grief in many ways puts us in that numb place because of that abruption that's happened from our normal patterns and our normal cycles that we walk through every day. All of a sudden, it forces us to question ourselves on a very, very deep level. And even when you talked about estrangement with family, I'm no stranger to that. I've walked that path for a few years,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
um,
Similar.
you
Yeah.
know, you get in that place of saying, well, I thought family was supposed to be this certain way, or I thought that, things would work out a little differently, or I thought I'd have the support I would have. And you end up in these moments of grief where you go, well, that didn't actually happen. It's actually this opposite thing over here. And then you get into that place of questioning your identity of who you are and where you belong and what you're supposed to do. And that's a very uncomfortable place because we're brought up in many ways with societal pressure to say, okay, well, you go to school for this long, you get married, you have kids, you get a job, you do this, you build a career. So we've had this implantation from a very, very young age about what life is supposed to look like. But when we go through grief and loss, we find out really quickly that life takes a lot of detours and twists and winds that we never see coming, and we don't know how to respond to it because we weren't taught it. And so I felt
So
like your
true.
poems were very representative of that.
Thank you. And I, it's real. It's just everyone experiences it in the way they do. And I, I, appreciate your point that definitely I experienced that and still do sometimes. Matter of fact, Monday will be the anniversary of my father's passing. And I moved up here in 2017. He passed away in 2014 from cancer. And this is the room he actually slept in. And my other psychological internal battle to move into the spaces where my late father lived. And I'm here now in place for my mom as her caregiver. So back to your point that when you're experiencing loss or you're revisiting that grief because of anniversaries or even in just the middle of nothing, like sometimes it'll just, as you know, hit you. It's true that you question, you know, things happen that you didn't expect. You question, you're disappointed. You question the people in your lives. You question your plans. You question yourself. You question life. You question your beliefs. But I think, from my own experience, that is really, really part of becoming resilient process. Because, you know, what you go through, as Eleanor, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of, point, that we've gone through something really difficult and look fear straight in the eye, that you can face anything that comes next. I feel like that's what grief is. And the thing is, my Buddhist practice helps me a lot too, because the original Buddha, there was a story in Buddhism where he was approached by a grieving woman who had lost her child, and she wanted desperately for him to bring the child back. And she begged him to use supernatural Buddha powers or something to bring back the child. And he said, okay, go visit every door in this neighborhood and get a mustard seed from the house of anyone who hasn't experienced a loss. She came back with nothing because everyone experienced some kind of loss. And she understood from that she's not alone. And then he sat next to her and just sat with her. He said nothing. And to me, that exemplifies, it's a universal experience. It feels like we're alone when we're in the middle of it and we're questioning all these things, the disruptions of things. But we all experience it as part of life, right? That we're all going to die and we're all going to lose someone. So that process of, what tools do you use to face that courageously, and help yourself build confidence in your own life and in what that experience is teaching your life. To me, that's kind of where I've come out with it, that whatever I've gone through, whatever I still go through with losses, and I really appreciate your podcast for this too, because in preparing just to meet with you and talk with you, I've listened to a lot of your dialogues with others, and it proves the point. It's a universal experience. The people that have gone through it have come out stronger, and we have a stronger sense of purpose, as you do, to help other people through that. And I think that's the point. That if we're not, I think the real struggle is that we're not defeated by it. And I think grief and loss can be such a big, heavy blow that it's very easy to lose your faith in whatever, in my case, the potential within my life, within the universe, within other people. But if you believe in God, it's easy for people to question that. But it's not about, the loss of something bigger than ourselves. It's really just learning, how to cope with what we all have to cope with, I think. Sorry, I went on a tangent, but that's how I feel about it.
No, I appreciate that, Jenny. You brought up a powerful word that doesn't get slung around the grief space very well, but resilience.
Yes.
That's something where I live a lot because
Yes.
in the last 5 years, I watched my grandfather take his last breath. I held him in that moment, and that's terrified me beyond comprehension. Lost a child 2 years after that. And then I lost a pet I had for 12 years. Then I lost a job in between. I got hit with so many different angles of things. And when I look back on my grief journey in particular, which is why I'm glad you brought up the word resiliency, when I see everyday problems come up, as they all do, whether that's you're late for work, sitting in traffic, the grocery line doesn't move as fast as you want, just little things like that that annoy us on a daily basis. When you go through such heavy compounded grief in your life and you face one of those situations, and everybody will, like you said, all of a sudden you start to see those little things and you go, I've survived much worse than that. Not a problem today. And I've
Perspective,
been in
right?
places where I've seen people where I go to a retail place or I go to a restaurant and I have a worker tell me, they're apologizing for making me wait. And I catch myself saying things like, I'm not in a hurry. Take your time. It's okay. I'm not in a race. I'm not in a hurry to do anything right now. I'm right here. And I think that grief has a way when you can be resilient, as Jenny's telling us, by the way, with her story, when you can find that resiliency to know that you survived something monumentally worse than what you face every day. you allow yourself compassion, you allow yourself grace. You also, by the way, give that back to other people in the form, like I said, of saying, hey, I'm not in a hurry. I'm not putting pressure on you today. Other people might, and that's fine, but I'm going to be different today and say, I can be kind to you. I can give you a second. It's fine. No hurry. You start to really find your grounding and your center in your life because you realize what actually matters versus what doesn't. And you really start to
Exactly.
find yourself through that.
I really love that, and I love your you're such a great example of using a compassionate response to people in challenging situations, or when there's a glitch, let's say in a scenario like you described. Your response is not to add pressure or criticism. Your response is to embrace their humanity, and you give them grace in the way that you responded. And I think that comes from people that have gone through loss and have experienced that become out they come out stronger, more resilient, and like you said, they understand in perspective what really matters. And in the grand scheme of things, you know, I experienced that very much myself when when dealing with loss of my dad or my brother or these different friends. It also woke me up to at the time I was in a teaching job, a music teaching job, and I realized, no, when you lose a loved one, it does make you question, what am I doing with my life, and what is more important here. And just like, when we meet people in a restaurant or stressful situation, you learn to give them grace because you feel that humanity, because you're going through something much bigger than that, and you give them grace. And for me, similar, I would look around and think, wait a minute, if the loss of these loved ones has taught me anything, it's that my life has a purpose, and I want to make sure I fulfill it. I want to fulfill my potential. And it's a lot of the times the losses, especially because they were all so sudden, they woke me up to that. Like, life is short. I mean, you don't know when you're going to go. You don't know when someone else is going to go. So you need to be sure that you're doing what you want to be doing with your life. And that definitely changed the way that I thought about things, which is what made me sell my home in Florida, move back up to be caregiver for my mother, start an online business, and go into coaching, because I have a bigger purpose than this particular job or whatever. And I really thank those experiences because, and I wouldn't have gotten there, I don't think, if it weren't for the quality of people that I've lost. My brother, my father, those dear friends of mine, they had such sincerity and pureness of heart and care for me. And they also had, most of them had a zest for life and a zest for living purposefully. And you can't not learn from that, and put it into your own life like that. So your experience of seeing what really matters and letting go the stuff that doesn't, that I think that's a common outcome for many people that have gone through and successfully wrestled with loss courageously, and dealt with their own feelings. You come out of that so much stronger. And on that note, I just keep wanting to go back to that, your whole your approach on the podcast and in your book, and with the lion, that symbol in your brand, basically, in what you've shared. I love how you say that feeling deeply is not weakness, it's courage. Because to me, that's really the crux of the grieving process, or what it feels like to go through loss. It's a matter of seeing very bravely, what you've never wanted to face ever, something that scares all of us. And yet, every single person on your show, and through your own experiences and through my experiences, we have looked loss straight in the eye. And that takes a lot of courage, to come out of that and then to turn it into a purpose, to help other people. I think it's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful thing that you're doing, and that you share with your audience, with the guests, because I don't think there's enough of that kind of perspective, like you said, that brings out the resilience of it, the sense of purpose, the meaning that comes from it. I'm really grateful that you have this, because through all the losses I've been through and all the memorials that I helped other people do, people don't talk about grief head on as well as this show does. And I think it's so important.
Thank
So,
you.
no, thank you, is my point. Thank you.
You know, Jenny, you just reminded me of a guy that I met at the UW Medical Center when my grandfather was going through cancer treatment. We went up one day and the guy they had to drink this Kool-Aid looking stuff for nuclear something. I don't remember what nuclear medicine is what it is. Some kind of isotope reading thing to track where the cancer is in the body kind of deal. Anyway, this guy looks across the room from my grandfather. My grandpa's like not wanting to drink this. He's a stubborn old man from the 30s. And anyway, both of them put their glass up and go, cheers kind of thing. And I saw that this guy was really, really happy for whatever reason. And when you're in a cancer ward, you're sitting around a bunch of people that some of them are going to die very, very soon. It's life. And it's hard to wrap your head around when you see people going through that are very happy. And so when my grandfather went into his treatment, I sat down with this guy and I said, I don't want to be, out of line or anything like that. But I said, you seem so happy. What's your story? And what came out of his mouth next really shocked me and hit me. I've never forgotten it. He said, "If I don't do chemo, I'm going to die." And I said, "Whoa." I was like, "That's heavy." And he said, "No, it's a good thing." He said, "I have over $1 million in medical debt. So if I die, it doesn't matter. I don't have to pay it back." And he said, on top of that, he said, "I'm getting married in 2 months. I'm married to this woman over here. You're sitting next to me right now." And he said, "I'm living my life the fullest I ever have in the most moment of fate where I'm at death on my doorstep." And I remember that moment being, because this is way before I went through the losses I had in 5 years. So I didn't fully comprehend it till after what I went through.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah.
But it was such a powerful perspective. And I've never forgotten that guy because he was the epitome that he could have taken grief where a lot of us do, including myself, where we get really sad, we get very down, we start missing things, we get very angry or upset. We really
Or,
express those things very openly.
or
And
deny.
here I see,
Yeah.
or deny.
Yeah.
And here I see this guy literally on death's doorstep, literally right there. And he's more happy than most people, including myself, have ever been in their everyday life where we have lots of years to live.
That's
If he
amazing.
doesn't get treatment, he dies. And I never forgot the guy because he really taught me a lesson that I think most people will never find, by the way, unless you run into somebody like that.
Mm.
So I wanted to give that guy a shout out for whatever reason today because I've never
Yeah.
forgotten him. And that was
Very valuable.
7 years
Very
ago.
valuable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what sticks in our minds when we go through things, and you can create meaning from things years later. And like, and in the grieving process, like it's not a one and done. You know, I when we have anniversaries of people that I've lost, when those dates happen, yeah, I mean, I feel grief. I feel the loss. Sometimes I feel very tender, vulnerable, sensitive, sad. But then other times, it doesn't matter what date it is, I just feel so grateful that I knew them. So, and I try to lean on that side of it. Like, yes, it's tough. Yes, going to experience loss after. I mean, I'm a caregiver for an 86-year-old parent, and at any point, my mom can go. I don't know how long she's going to live. Though I told her we're up here on an agreement that she lives until 120. So I keep pushing her, but
I love
you,
that.
keep going, mama. But that dealing with that anticipatory grief, I deal with that too on a regular basis. So for me, I find for that what works for me is my own spiritual practice. As an SGI Buddhist, I chant regularly, and chanting literally is just, it's like a vocal meditation, and it's a rhythmic thing. It's almost like breath work too, because you're repeating a mantra over and over, and doing that raises my life state. And studying the teachings of Buddhism really have helped me develop that resilience to be able to look difficulties in the face and know that because I'm human, I have unlimited potential based on Buddhist teachings. Therefore, I can do this. I have the strength, I have the wisdom, I have the compassion. I can do whatever is coming. And that has been my main tool to help me really navigate, and continues to be my main anchor. But also as a creator, as I've shared in writing music, sharing it at memorials, just writing music itself for my own expression of my dialogue with that friend or my brother or my dad or whoever, is in the music at the time. That is for me a way to eternally honor them and tribute to them. Like, creativity to me is that. And everyone can do that. It's not just because I'm a musician, I'm the only one that can do that. Like, anybody can use art, drawing, journaling, poetry, explore music in some way, take nature photos, or just immerse yourself in nature and have a quiet, dialogue with your loved one.
Yeah.
A useful tool that we can all use is just on that dialogue with our loved ones in our heart, just because they're not here. That's an experience I do want to share that really brings this point home. That when my brother was killed suddenly in a car accident, I had just moved back from Japan and was living with my parents temporarily, and the coroner came to the door, and I was there. I opened the door, and of course I dealt with it. That's what I mean by functioning. I had to function for other people and get things together, because my parents were just like like stone statues. They just could not move or function for a long time. So as I went through that experience, I remember sitting down and chanting in my Buddhist practice. And you can do this with prayer too, whatever your belief system is. But I chanted because I was so scared. I was so shocked, and like the unbelievable happened, and I was chanting with my fear, and suddenly, and I'm not really one prone to woo woo, stuff. I'm very practical in most of my approach, but I literally felt my brother bear hug me from behind. I literally felt his big arms. He was like 6'2", and I felt a message. I don't know if it's his voice or what, but it felt like it was coming straight from him, and it basically said, "Everything is okay. Just because you can't see beyond this life, life or dimension, doesn't mean anything's wrong. I'm okay. You're okay." And honestly, I felt nothing but calmness come over me. It just like completely dissipated my fear. I felt, and I still, thinking back to it, I think, oh, that's right. Your bond with someone transcends time and space. It's not just because you're standing right in front of me or I'm hugging you right here in this lifetime, but when my mom's gone, I will still have this eternal dialogue with her every day in my heart. My brother really, I think, taught me that through that experience. So I hope other people experience that, the comfort of knowing that. I mean, I'm amazed that I got that message because I don't believe in stuff. I'm very practical, but it really, calmed my anxiety and helped me understand life is so much bigger than you think it is. Life, meaning life and death and the cycle of it. It is so much bigger. Just because you don't see it in front of you or understand it with your little brain doesn't mean it's not okay. It's part of your journey. So I really wanted to share that because I hope other people get some encouragement from that you're not alone. We're all connected, you know, uh, transcending everything. There's a concept in Buddhism of 3,000 realms in a single life moment, which means everything, like on every phenomena, is connected in one single moment. So your thought, your prayer to connect automatically connects in that way, transcending everything. And I feel that through my practice, with my experience anyway, with loss. So I
Well,
know
Jenny,
we've talked a long time, so I know you're probably worried about time. So
no, I wanted to ask you a powerful question because you're coming up on the anniversary of your father passing on Monday. And something I wanted you to share with the audience, if you're open to it, is, around these anniversaries, grief tends to get a little rear its ugly head, as I like to say, as it does for me. What are some ways that you navigate around anniversaries that help give you a sense of peace and calm during those times, or even a way if you are having a lot of grief come up? What are some ways that you navigate that?
thank you for asking that. And yeah, it happens. I would say I remind myself I'm not alone in this experience, like we've been talking about. This is a universal experience. You're not by yourself in this. And especially be patient with yourself and be even more gentle with yourself than you think you should. I find that it's very similar to, again, the creative process when you're not able to create because you need the time to incubate and rest. Experiencing grief and loss sometimes and anniversaries can slow you down and your energy can be much slower, and just accept that, slow yourself down and give yourself more gentleness and more time, and lean into whatever, like I've talked about, whatever truly supports you, whether that's prayer or meditation or more rest, napping, quiet time, autonomy, nature immersion, like any kind of artwork, writing, music creation, singing, and like I said, spiritual study or a prayer, and also you could talk with someone safe. And I experiences with some toxic behaviors from others, so clear away from that when you're tender and vulnerable like that. Give yourself whatever you feel like you need, and however you need to process grief in your own time, not on someone else's timeline. And don't judge yourself. Everyone does this differently. That's what I would say. That's what I do. I just try to give myself grace, and that's what I would say to anybody going through that. No.
I really appreciate you sharing that part of grief as you come up on your anniversary of your father
Mm.
passing. Because I think a lot of us don't really. I'm trying to find the words for it sometimes. I'm still learning this three years after the fact, but there's a lot of times grief is very subconscious, and so you may notice patterns in yourself being very irritable, being very frustrated by the
Right.
littlest thing.
Right.
Be very kind to yourself, by the way, because grief doesn't always come right up in front of you and say, "Hi, I'm here." It usually comes out in these other areas of things where you might be a little snappy or frustrated, things like that. Be patient with yourself in those moments. When you realize that you're coming up around an anniversary, be kind to yourself. Say, you know what? I probably am having some grief that's rolling around that I'm not holding space for right now, or I'm not giving myself a moment to fully acknowledge that and how I might be feeling right now. And the
And I would
gen
add to that, that not just in the moment of anniversaries, sometimes grief will hit you like a rock out of nowhere. And so when you're feeling those negative emotions, first of all, just acknowledge you're feeling something. A lot of people don't even realize they're feeling something. So just acknowledge that you're feeling it and give yourself that grace. It doesn't have to be around an anniversary either. It can happen in the middle of nothing, as you know. So sorry.
Yeah, and that's why no, I appreciate that because that's why I wrote on my bookmark, feeling is courage, it's not weakness.
Yes.
And this is something I try to help men with. I know it's cool to be the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Tough Guy, don't ever look like anything affects you. I get it.
Mm.
I'm a man, I get it, but I'm gonna be honest with you. We have feelings too. And I'm sorry to tell
Right.
you this, but it's not weakness, it's actually vulnerability. And it is something that's very, very strong if you connect with it because it'll give you purpose and meaning as you go through grief. I've learned that a lot through many, many women I've met across my journey and even across my podcast. I've seen how strengthening it is to actually just sit with your emotions and really feel and understand what you might be going through at that point. Because, like I've said before too, everybody's journey is individual. Nobody can say that they know your experience or know how
Right.
you feel or how
Right.
you're going to want to go through something. Nobody can. But give yourself that space by allowing yourself to feel. I think that's the biggest gift that we can all show ourselves a little compassion as we go through anniversaries. And even to your point, it might be a random day in the middle of summer where you think you're fine most of the day, and then something triggers you, something
Right.
reminds you of something.
Right.
It can always happen those moments as well. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to say to that, thank you for helping men understand that being vulnerable by allowing yourself to feel is an actual strength, which is what your bookmark clearly, maps that out. But I want, even as a female, I am, a woman, but I have never felt comfortable in my family allowing myself to be vulnerable because I've grown up with toxic behaviors. I've learned to internalize my feelings, which is why creativity is such a gift for me, because I can put all of that into my creativity safely, that way. And I have good friends in relationships too that I can do that with. But it's not just men sometimes that don't feel comfortable with expressing openly, or being, emotionally vulnerable. Women sometimes have that challenge based on whatever dynamics you've grown up with. So that's why for me it's been really encouraging to hear you remind me that allowing your feelings in a place and with someone safe, making sure you're not with anybody that doesn't make you feel safe when you're doing so, is a huge thing, and that's why creativity for me has been such medicine, because it allows me to be vulnerable in a very safe way. It allows anyone to do that. So I just highly recommend it as a tool.
I love that. I'm with you. I always try to tell people paint, draw, go outside to go into nature, go hike. Like you said, your brother was a big nature guy. Nature, by the way, I don't know what it is out there, but go find yourself out in the forest 5 miles away from society. You will actually hear yourself think. You will feel how you feel.
Yeah.
Nature will meet you exactly where you are, not where other people want you to be. And you can really find yourself in a grounding place. And so
Yeah.
I always like to encourage that. Jenny, as we wrap up the podcast, I wanted to ask you if you could tell listeners a little bit about your books and also a little bit about where they could listen to your podcast.
Thank you so much for all of this and for that opportunity. Um, well, in a nutshell, my podcast is Your Creative Chord, and it's where I just show you actionable strategies for reclaiming your energy, your creative flow, and self expression, learning how to have sustainable creative energy, dealing with burnout, recovery, setting boundaries, all of that kind of thing, because these become blocks to sustainable energy. So we learn how to reset that and through my coaching program and all my line of digital products. And I use my poetry, music, and nature immersion because I'm also a nature photographer, and reflective prompts in all of my content and in my digital products and in my coaching program. So I give you an opportunity to really immerse yourself in that experience and see how to use nature and creativity and spiritual practices. And you can find any of those, my works and free resources at yourcreativechord.com, including, by the way, a free poetry sampler and a burnout reset guide. And I also have a burnout reset kit for deeper support, particularly if you're struggling with burnout recovery. And my creative empowerment coaching program is there as well. So it's just yourcreativechord.com, where you can find everything.
I love that. Well, for listeners, when you guys get done listening to this episode, go in the show notes because I will have Jenny's links in there. I'd highly recommend you
Thank you.
check out
Thank you.
her podcast, check out her website. As you guys have learned today, by the way, she's a very phenomenal woman who's gone through a lot of grief and loss in life. And you also have heard some very real ways for you to navigate that and through empathy and compassion for yourself. And that's where I think that I wish that message was more profound as we go through life. So I wanted to just say thank you to all you guys listening today. Jenny, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Chris, thank you so much for this very valuable conversation. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank all of you guys for joining Jenny and I on today's episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. If this episode resonates with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Jenny's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you, visit empoweredgriefjourney.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple and Podbean. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. I want you to know that you're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.